So, share with you some quick thoughts here. And I'm actually going to split my message a little bit between today and next Sunday. Next Sunday, our theme is on emptiness, the gift of being lost. And there's so much overlap between these ideas of being lost and being empty. And I want to think with you about those both kind of overlapping. But I'll start this morning. And then next Sunday, we also have some surprises musically, I believe. We still going that direction? We'll be doing our first Led Zeppelin tune ever in 11:11. We hope. That's the plan. Forrest Church, who is the late pastor of a huge church in New York City called All Souls Church, and a prolific writer, wrote a book at the age of 60. He died of cancer early, not too much longer after this book was written. The book's called Lifecraft, The Art of Meaning in the Everyday, and in it he explores how we make meaning out of our life in the face of some of life's greatest challenges, the crises we face, the tragedies, and the twists and turns, and how we tell stories about ourselves in light of that, and the stories that we tell others about ourselves. He begins the final chapter of the book this way. He says, "Begin at the beginning. Where did we come from, and why did we turn up when and where we did? Choice may be a factor during the course of our lives, but it had nothing to do with our own arriving here in the first place. We didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose our country. We didn't choose the economic stratum into which we were born. We didn't choose our gender, our sexual orientation, or even our century. Again, whenever we are tempted to ask, what did I do to deserve this? Whether this is something we chose or that we choose to like, or whether it's something we find ourselves struggling with, the answer, what did I do to deserve this, is simply nothing. We did nothing to be here. We are the innocent victims and unworthy beneficiaries, he says, of life's incredible largesse. To think otherwise is most certainly presumptuous, arrogant, or perhaps even self-deluded. He goes on to talk about the reality that if you look back at our ancestors, you can look back at your parents, you can look back at your grandparents, you can look back at your ethnic background, you can look back at the migration patterns. If you do the little DNA test, you can look all the way back. You can look further back before the beginning of civilization and humanity. You can look at the stars, the universe. And if you think about it, really, how we are here and what we are here has been in place from the very beginning. However that beginning came about, because even we are still of the substance of stars. Billions and billions of years later, we are still part of the carbon that makes up the reality of the stars. And yet it all seems so accidental. We've got a granddaughter coming pretty soon. Wasn't planned. First time it was announced, my wife and I looked at each other and went, "Oh my God." And then we said, "Oh my God, it's a baby." Who knows what else happens? It's a baby. But initially, it doesn't fit within the narrative, right? I mean, we all have narratives that we somehow have decided we have to live by. And these narratives become so ingrained that we don't know what's reality and what's not reality. The challenge sometimes is to remember, by all intents and purposes and all science and understanding, the fact that we're here at all is a complete accident and an amazing miracle. One of my favorite theologians that I studied in seminary was a German theologian named Rudolf Otto. I didn't understand much of what he wrote, kind of like Paul Tillich, but I figure if you're a theologian and you put up a sign that you ought to at least be credited for having the substance to presume to know anything. And he said something that really struck me, that I identify with. He said, "The core experience of religion is mysterium tremens et fascinas." You know your Latin, right? Okay. It is a tremendous, awe and fear-inspiring fascinating mystery. That's the core of the experience of religion. Now, that's not what you necessarily hear a lot of, and that's not necessarily what you hear a lot of folks debating or arguing against. I love to watch the atheists who sit back and say it's all myth. It's all myth and therefore ridiculous, unworthy of our attention. And then you have the other side, which is saying it's this myth, this strange myth is in fact and history, and they're both going at each other when I want to say, what's the matter with myth? What's the matter with myth? With mystery? All of our lives, we've presumed to be able to tell stories about ourselves and that they are correct, when we probably should be understanding even the stories we tell about our own selves have that dimension of myth. It holds some truth, and then it holds some complete fabrication in the sense of there's absolutely no substance to it. Sometimes the emptiness that we experience in life is something that happens to us. This mystery doesn't feel celebrative. It doesn't feel fascinating at all. In fact, it feels quite terrifying to us. And then at other times, we choose the mystery. If you read the blog, I told you about how my own sort of mystery began when I left the local church as a pastor some years back as a local pastor. I've been ordained for 30 years almost. And some of my first church experiences, I was here locally, and then I had my own church south of Dallas. And after a year, I completely felt out of place. Everything was going fine. The church was growing. There was tensions in the church, but the church was doing great. And yet I kept thinking to myself as I stepped up in the pulpit, excuse me, I'm going to leave Tom over here for a little while, and he's going to put on this body and stand up here. It was completely out-of-body experience. Until one day I heard someone sharing stories. It reminded me of my uncle sharing stories. Then they said they traveled the country and made a living selling stories. And so I talked to my district superintendent, and I said, I think I'm supposed to travel the country as a storyteller. And he said, really? But my wife, on the other hand, said, that made perfect sense. She saw something of that joy and passion that comes from experiencing the power of myth that connects us all. So my first library conference, where I was trying to get jobs, because I didn't have any other way of getting jobs, I simply put my name out there, send a little flyer out there, put some information on there. I'm good, trust me, hire me sometime and you'll see. I mean, I didn't have any credibility. I didn't have any quotes or anything. And so I was at it, and the librarian came from across the room. And if you read the blog, I'll repeat myself here, but she came across. She was wearing this bright yellow dress, looked like an Easter sunrise in the middle of this exhibit hall kind of crowd, had a big church hat on with a blue feather sticking out the back of it, carrying a big library kind of bag. You know, when you go to these conferences, it's stuffed full of books and stuff. And on one side it said, I am, in fact, a librarian. And then on the other side it said, I like big books and I cannot lie. And she said, hi, I see you play instruments and you're a storyteller. And I said, yeah, and I'm writing some children's books I'm trying to get published. And she said, that's great. She said, I wonder if you would ever go someplace that's nowhere in particular. And I thought, what a strange question. I said, well, where is exactly you want me to go? And she said, it's uncertain. Well, some of you were here last week. You already know what I'm talking about. I said, I'm sorry, that sounds like a Zen joke. She said, no, I'm in a little school just outside of Uncertain, Texas. She said, would you ever go to a place called Uncertain? And I thought to myself, of course. Given what I've done at this point, given the choices I've made, that sounds like that's exactly where I should be. Now, in retrospect, 20 some odd years later, I've come to call my life the Uncertain Texas Tour. But in reality, it's all of our lives. Once we recognize and realize that where we are is simply where we are in that moment, and that every moment is gift, and that every moment is filled with possibilities, even as much as it's filled with challenges and mystery and uncertainty. Once we get to that place, we've all joined in on the Uncertain Texas Tour. Now, the challenge for some of us, of course, is that you're thinking, and Paul's writing affirmed this, that there is a very specific set of beliefs you're supposed to hold on to while you're on this tour. But the challenge with that is, the tighter you hold on to things, the more difficult it is to be present. The tighter we hold on to things, the more difficult it is to be present. And pretty soon we no longer have assumptions, but the assumptions have us. We no longer have the beliefs, but the beliefs have us. We no longer have those stories we tell, but the stories have us. The challenge to be on the uncertain tour is to practice uncertainty, is to celebrate uncertainty. And that's difficult. Paul Tillich was one of my favorite theologians, and Frederick Buechner has a thing that he wrote in one of his books that describes something Paul Tillich said. Well, actually, I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself. I'm going to step back real quickly and tell you, I'm just going to give you a description of just how uncertain things are. A little sermon illustration here. Everybody take your hand up. Look at your hand. Now, we assume that this is our hand. I'm going to mess with you for a minute. We assume this is our body. If you're like me, you've probably spent a lot of time taking a look at it in the mirror. Not always happy about it. Sometimes a little overly arrogant about it, maybe. Maybe today I look particularly good, you think. Most of the time we're not very happy with ourselves. We sort of carry around this uncertainty about what it is we are. We assume that this is us. So that when this starts to decay, we assume it's bad. Because we've become the center of the universe. By assuming this is what's important, by attaching ourselves to this life, to this body, to this hand. But here's the scientific reality. The scientific reality is that if you get deep down into this thing, and if you get to subatomic level, right? You get down to the nucleus, and you get into the molecular, then you get down to nuclei, and then you get down to protons and neutrons, and then you've realized that in between all of that, around the the nucleus of the atom, there is this whole field of something that's called nothing. That if you were to put a grape in the middle of the TCU stadium, the relative distance would be the same as the stadium outside walls from that grape. And that's in every one of the atoms that make up our body. So that if you really think about it, we are 99% empty. Next time you think you're special, remind yourself, I'm 99.9% not even here. I'm empty. And that's a difficult challenge because we identify, we attach to stuff. Not just our bodies, but then our beliefs. Not just our beliefs, but then our expectations. Not just the expectations, but the stories that got us here in the first place. We get so attached to everything that we forget we're basically nothing anyway. But here's the amazing thing about this. That when you read this text again, and I'm going to have to get it back in front of me because I've drawn a total blank. Here's the amazing thing, that when you get right back to this, what this was the early Christian hymn. It was a way of an affirmation in the early church. But when you get back to it, being born in a human likeness, emptying himself, letting go of all of those expectations of who he's supposed to be, but being present to one another, being present in the form of servant, being present in the sense of, how is my life going to make your life interesting? How are you going to inform me and teach me something? Being that emptiness, we suddenly recognize something. Because not only spiritually, but scientifically, we are a part of the substance of stars. We are the part of the substance of life in the air that we breathe. We are essentially the part of the atomic structure that moves in and out of life all the time that we can't even see. So that when Paul Tillich was said to be sitting on the shore sometimes, often to go to the shore, to the west coast, and sit with a pile of sand and sit upon that. The great theologian Paul Tillich would sit, and he would look out over the vast ocean and the waves crashing and the waves receding and the waves crashing. And he wrote down and he said, the wave comes and goes. The wave lives and dies. But the ocean is everything. And I am part of the ocean. And I come and go. and we come and go. But we are part of such a great mystery. How easy it is to get caught up and think we're something special. And yet at the same time, if you can let go of that, we are indeed something amazing, something special. But I'm not going to see it as clearly until I see it in you. I'm not going to experience it as richly until I let go of enough stuff that I can be really present to you. So just a quick thought before I end with one of my favorite songs. And we'll spend some more time talking about emptiness next week as our sermon is the joy of getting lost. Am I tied up? I'm tangled up here? Yeah, okay. Some of you know this song. It's basically kind of become my theme song. Put that right over there. The secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. There ain't nothing to it. Any fool can do it. Everyone knows that. Nobody knows how we got to the top of the hill. Since we're on our way down, might as well enjoy the ride. The secret of love is in opening up your heart. It's okay to feel afraid, but don't let that stand in your way. 'Cause everyone knows that love is the only road. Since we're only here for a while, you might as well show some style. Just give us a smile. Isn't it a lovely ride? We're just gliding down and we're sliding down. Try not to try too hard. It's just a lovely ride. Well, the thing about time is that time isn't really real. It's just your point of view. How does it feel to you? 'Cause Einstein said we could never understand it all. Planets spinning in space. That smile you put on your face. Welcome to the human race. Isn't it a lovely ride? We're just gliding down and we're sliding down. Try not to try too hard. It's just a lovely ride. Isn't it a lovely ride? Yes, we're sliding down and we're gliding down. Just try not to try too hard. It's just a lovely ride. The secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. So, it seems so redundant or perhaps impossible or perhaps just too fanciful to say that, because I know we experience challenges and I know we experience difficulties. But there is something to turning to one another, even in some of the most difficult times, and saying, is it okay if I practice a little letting go with you? You know, sometimes do it for fun just to get in the practice. 7 things, just do it with one another. Just do it while you're driving in the car. 7 things, just start making them up. But then when you find yourself mad at the guy that jerked right in front of you on the highway, 7 reasons why I love that guy. Or you find yourself angry with your spouse or your partner, 7 things that I've forgotten to like about you. Or 7 things that I'm mad at myself because I'm feeling this way. Just challenge yourself to begin to let go, to begin to identify and then let go Because I guarantee the more we open up to one another, the more that we realize we're 99% not even here. The more we begin to realize we are here because each other is here. That's really why we're here. Amen.